I want all of you to please give a warm welcome in the comments to Jeff Crilley.
I'm so
Amazing connection that I've met over the last few months. And Jeff is the CEO of Real News Public Relations, author of this very cool book, by the way, which you should all pick up. It's called Free Publicity. I saw it on Amazon, right? You can order it on Amazon. And a former TV reporter, an Emmy award-winning TV reporter. So Jeff, thank you for being on the show.
I am honored, and you look amazing. I don't know if we can get a wide shot to show her shoes, but you don't often get to see Fanny's shoe on the show. And
a little bling.
I want to compliment you, Fanny, because you eat your own cooking. You're preaching the gospel of video creation and content creation. Absolutely. And in order to do that well, you have to serve your audience, and you've done such a great job. And so I've watched a number of your episodes. You're the consummate host, and I'm thrilled to be on your show.
Thank you. Well, tell my audience briefly about yourself and your journey. You have quite a career and quite a transition, right?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I wanted to be a TV reporter ever since I can remember. And so I started climbing up through the markets. I went from Lansing to Omaha, Omaha to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Dallas at Fox 4 here in Dallas, and spent a total of 25 years in TV news. Wow. And as you mentioned, I wrote this book.
Yes,
and
we're going to talk about that later, guys.
So the book kind of changed my life because I asked my boss's permission to go out and start speaking about the book, and she said, okay, as long as you know you're not allowed to accept money, just speak for free. And that was actually a gift, because in order to make any money selling a $10 book and you can't accept a speaker's fee, I had to make it up in volume. So you're looking at a guy who spoke for 300 times a year for 6 straight years, in addition to his TV job. So it was breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Fox 4. Breakfast speech, lunch speech.
This is the ultimate pro, everyone.
The blessing is I was working so hard to promote this book that this business that you see now was born from this book. Because as I'm signing autographs on their book jacket, they're saying, hey, gosh, I could get your little do-it-yourself book, but I don't have time to do any of this stuff. I mean, calling the media and writing press releases, I don't have time to do this. Could I just hire you, Jeff Crilley? And I would always say, no, you can't hire me. I'm on TV. I'll give you free advice. And I'd give them free advice, and they would take it. And the next thing you know, they were front page of the Dallas Morning News or something like that. And I started to recognize, gosh, I'm better at this PR thing than a lot of the people who are pitching me stories. And so in every career, there's a buyer and a seller. And so if you look at Congress, you have a congressperson, and then behind the scenes is a lobbyist. The lobbyist doesn't get the publicity that a congressperson gets, but the lobbyist might be making a lot more money than the congressperson. And so in the world of TV news, you have journalists, and then you have PR people who are pitching journalists. Well, I started to recognize that a lot of these PR people were driving a nicer car than the one I was driving. And I said, you know what?
On some of that.
On my list of things to do before I die, I think I'd like to make more money than Rupert Murdoch was willing to pay me at Channel 4. And so, at the ripe old age of 45, I took a real big gamble. I walked away from a lucrative career in TV news. I would still be on Channel 4 today, I'm convinced, working alongside Sean Rabb and Heather Hayes and Steve Eager, Mike Ducey, if I wanted to. But I took a gamble. I said, okay, I'm 45. I'm not getting any younger. I don't want to be that old guy on the side of the road telling you, slow down, it's raining in Dallas, or whatever TV news reporters do. And so I asked my wife's permission to quit, and I quit in 2008, the beginning of the downturn. So that I quit 1 month before the housing bubble bursts and we go into the Great Recession. Could have been devastating, but I had 70,000 books declaring me an expert.
Mhm.
I mean, you could literally hire the guy who wrote the book on publicity.
Yeah.
So I never had a bad year. First year, 10 clients. Second year, 20 clients. Third year, 30 clients. So, I was starting to grow. I started to hire people. And now I wake up, I just celebrated 11 years. May was 11 years in
Wow.
business.
Congrats.
And I've got 20 full-time employees, more
Oh
than
my
100
gosh.
clients, the
Wow.
largest being Walmart. And I got into the wide world of video production and
Yes.
broadcasting, and I
And
love
look
my
at what
life.
you've built.
Yes, yes,
Oh my gosh. Yes.
yes,
And I think Holden is going to help us show like a little behind the scenes glimpse into the studios that you've built here.
yes. And so these are actually live
Yeah.
pictures. So that's Matt Stoker, who works with us. He
Let
used
us
to be,
know. Yeah.
yeah,
Let
he
us
used
know
to,
what these
yeah. So
rooms are.
that set there we called the newsroom, because that anchor desk cost me $8,000, and the only reason
Wow.
I tell people that is in order to sit behind something that nice, you have to go
Yeah.
to Channel 8, and they don't let you come in off the street.
And it's like uplit
yes,
too.
yes, and I love the view. I
Gorgeous.
mean, that's
Yes.
I was doing a Zoom call from the anchor desk, and somebody from New York said, "Man, I love your green screen." I said,
Yeah.
"That's not a green screen. That's
Yeah.
that's real
That's
life.
the real thing.
That's real traffic."
Yes.
So that one we called the mid-century room,
Uh-huh.
and you can always see traffic in the background. I think when the wind is blowing, the trees
Yeah.
kind of move softly in the background. There's my daughter, my lovely daughter
Yes.
Sarah, is my vice
This one has
president.
a Zen vibe.
Yep,
Right?
she has no idea she's on camera right now.
That's real behind the scenes,
That's
folks.
real behind the scenes. And okay, so and that's a shot of. I guess we call that the well, I call it the Martha Stewart room, because that room seems more like a lifestyle show.
Yeah. All the
And
white bricks. And
yes,
nice
and that's
Zen desk.
that's one of
and
our
bookshelf.
clients who's
Yeah.
about to do her show.
Yeah.
It's called We Are VIP, and
Mm.
I love the idea that I can just take people with an idea for a show and match them up with a producer who used to do morning radio or morning television,
Yeah.
create a show open, and suddenly they've got this really, high-end product
Yeah.
that makes them look like a rock star.
It does. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. And actually, I wanted to point out to my audience a very special thing you said, because I also have a lot of corporate professionals that are currently in job transition right now. And a lot of them have to pivot and find a second career or a third career. And there's fear out there around, I'm in my 40s, right? I got to start looking for a new job and start something new. But like, you're a great example of how, even if no matter how successful you are at one thing, you can still like pivot and try something else. And 11 years later after that,
Thank you.
At this second phase of your life.
Thank
right?
you. No, it's been glorious. And I guess my advice to your viewer is they have to be honest with themselves on their ability to face fears. So it's the difference between a lion at the zoo and a lion in the wild. A lion at the zoo gets a steak at 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. And that's called working for corporate America. A lion in the wild has to learn how to hunt. And so being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. That's not what this show is about. Go quit your day job or go start your own company. But if you have the ability to have just a little bit of fear, I heard a saying, I don't know if I heard it on your show or not, that the definition of courage is to have fear, but hold on to the fear just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And if you hold on to that fear a little bit longer, it's called courage. And then you can do something special. And so what I was doing when I walked away from a career in TV news is, man, I was kind of used to getting a check every week. Every Friday I would get a check. What happens when that check doesn't come on Friday? It's you eat what you kill. And I had enough confidence in myself that I was like, okay, I'm not going to starve. I have already a successful speaking career, and I could probably continue to go out and speak and sell books. But what if I had a PR firm behind the book and said to the person, hey, if you don't want to do it yourself.
Yeah.
I'll do it for you.
Right.
What would that look like?
Right.
And it was fearful. I have to promise you, like
Yeah.
when I wrote my letter of resignation at Fox 4, my finger hovered above the send button for a full minute.
Yeah.
I mean, all I knew since I was 20 was I was a TV news reporter. So I knew as soon as I pressed send,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to take it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for a full minute, because I'd written it, I was like, okay, Crilley, if you do this, if you press send, you're not taking it back, and you are a lion in the wild all of a sudden.
Yes.
And so I pressed send, and as I did that, I was thrilled and horrified at the same time.
I sometimes feel like that on my videos. Yes. Yeah, and I have a hashtag that I always tell people, like hashtag do it scared. Right?
I love that.
Just do it scared and like let your heart pound, and then do it anyways. Even if your voice quivers,
Yes.
do it anyways.
Yes. Well, I mean, all of the people we admire, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the
Yes.
Mark Cubans,
Yes.
you know they had fear. I mean, when Mark Cuban came to Dallas 20 plus years ago, he was sleeping on other people's couches. I mean, he tells this story that, you know, starting the companies that would lead to broadcast.com, that would later lead to Yahoo and billions of dollars. There were a lot of scary times along the way. And now we all look at Mark Cuban as really kind of a business legend, which he is.
Yes.
But
Yes.
part of that is for him to say, I'm going to bet on myself.
Yeah.
And so if there's a viewer out there thinking, gosh, do I want to start my own company? My advice would be, it's never a bad idea to start a company as a side hustle, and have your side hustle start to make as much money as your day job.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, total transparency, I don't mind sharing numbers.
Yeah.
At my height at Channel 4, I was making $135,000 a year, which is a good salary for a TV news person.
Yes.
I was making $100 on the side, selling a book. So
Yeah.
that whole time, for 6 years, I'm making $100,000 a year on the side. So leaving TV news, while it was scary, it wasn't like, oh my God.
You tested the waters.
Yeah, I was practicing for
Yes.
another job and or a career in public relations.
For sure.
So there's never a bad time to start a side hustle. Even if it's only making you a few $1,000s a year, you're practicing. You're saying, okay, do I know the market?
Yeah.
Do I know my clients? What do I not know about running a business? What do I not know about hiring people? So you're practicing all of that stuff while you're still doing the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And then when the income begins to grow, you start to say to yourself, well, if I had 40 hours a week back to myself instead of giving it to my boss, what would this look like? And the math becomes easier when you've already proven, gosh, this side hustle is actually working out.
And that's what I kind of see with content creation, right? Like over time, I always encourage my audience to create videos and create content. Because over time, as you share your expertise, in your case, you did it through speaking engagements, over time, you're going to build up thought leadership. Right? And your thought leadership is in PR, right? So whatever your expertise is, definitely build it up, create content so that you can build up that following and audience as well. And your expertise is PR, right? Public relations. So what are you seeing right now as some of the challenges in PR,
so
the industry?
Yeah, PR is a broad subject. Sometimes when I think about PR, I think about media relations, which is actually just one little silo of public relations. Public relations is social media, public relations is email marketing, public relations is news coverage, public relations is how good is your website, public relations is public speaking. There's a lot of little silos within public relations. The piece that we specialize in is getting people on the news and now giving them their own show. And let's talk about the getting people on the news piece. So getting people on the news is a dying art. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the practitioners in public relations are very young and don't watch the news. And
yeah.
so they don't necessarily.
We're watching social media platforms.
so,
Yeah.
and I'm not bashing PR people. I'm just saying that in order to be effective at public relations and media placement, you actually have to watch the news and know what the media is talking about and recognize, oh my gosh, they're talking about this legal case and we have a lawyer who could be on the news talking about that legal case, because news is very, very quick.
Yes.
Sometimes they're feasting on a story on Monday and on Tuesday they don't care about that story anymore. And so one of the things we do, I have one employee that I joke watches news for a living. That's what she does. She is a former executive producer at Good Morning Texas here in Dallas at Channel 8. And now she is watching the news, looking for opportunities to see, oh gosh, they're talking about this. We have a client who talks about the same thing. Hey, Channel 8, hey, Channel 4, do you need an expert? And so we're matching them up at, we call it publicity at the speed of news, which is important because I remember as a TV news reporter, I'd get a call from a publicist offering me their client one day too late. And they'd call me up on Tuesday and I'd say, gosh, where were you yesterday? Yesterday I was looking all over for
so you're kind of anticipating
Yeah.
where the news or trends are next, right?
And you kind of have to do that. One of my favorite quotes is Wayne Gretzky. He says, the reason I'm a great hockey player is everybody else is skating to the puck. I'm skating to where the puck is going to be.
Right.
And so all I do, I get up at 3 in the morning. I know that sounds crazy,
Wow.
but I get up at 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
begin the day of this company by putting out an email to 30,000 journalists.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a tip sheet. It's a daily tip sheet that goes out to 30,000 journalists, and I'm giving them ideas on stories that they could do that day. And so by doing that, I'm doing a couple of things. I'm helping a lot of clients get on the news, because journalists will receive
kind of planting ideas in their head.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
The other thing it's helping me do is I'm incredibly sharp. Imagine it takes me from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. to put together this daily newsletter. So by the time I come to work here at 9 in the morning, I've already put in like 4 hours, right?
Goodness. Yes.
But it makes me incredibly sharp on what is the media buying, what is the angle, what's the right way to position this pitch to get on the news. So one of my party tricks is, how would I get somebody on the news? And so somebody like you would be easy to get on the news, because you are giving advice to a lot of job seekers at a time when we have 40 million people unemployed. So when the latest unemployment numbers come up or jobless numbers come up and the media is looking for an expert to talk about the unemployment situation, I could plug you into, she has this network, she has this show.
That's so cool.
You see what I'm doing?
I won't lie.
I'm plugging you into a narrative that the media is already buying.
Right.
You could probably give advice on the right way to apply for a job, what to say, what not to say, what your LinkedIn profile should look like, use video, right? Even a video interview. You probably could give some advice on interviewing etiquette. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're probably an expert on that you don't know you are. And in media, there's a little bit of a circular logic. Why is she an expert? Because she's on the news. Why is she on the news? Because she's an expert. So once we kind of get the ball rolling and you start appearing on the news, you have to be an expert, because that's who they interview.
So in this world, like you say, where all eyes are on social media, right? Versus sometimes we're not tuning into the news. Is it still worthwhile for people to get on the news?
So that's a very good question. News audiences are in decline. You don't have as many eyeballs watching the news as you used to. But one of the things that we do at my firm is we take a news clip and then we amplify it on social media. So for instance, this morning I had the pleasure of watching one of our clients on Fox and Friends. So Fox and Friends goes out to 2.2 million people. It's one of the most watched shows in America. But this client's friends might not have been watching. They could have been watching ABC or NBC. So we take that clip, a recording service that we use.
Mm.
We take that clip
Yeah.
and we push it out on her social media. So now all of her
It's a
friends,
distribution channel
yes,
too.
all her friends on
Mm.
LinkedIn and Facebook and
Yes.
Twitter are like, oh my goodness, I
Yes.
just saw you on Fox and Friends.
Yes.
But they didn't see the live feed.
Yeah.
They saw the replay
Yeah.
on social media.
And it still lends credibility,
Big time.
right?
Big
News
time.
still gives you extra credibility.
Well, there's a formula that is in all of the marketing books. It says news is 7 times more believable than advertising.
Mm.
And they've done studies on this. So
Yeah.
they'll have focus groups and they'll show them an ad for a Lexus, and then they'll show them the critic's review of the same Lexus. And they'll say, which one do you put more stock in? Which one do you believe more?
Right.
And the critic's review is always weighted 7 times more believable than the ad. So by getting you on, you know, if I got you on Channel 8 tomorrow, I think the jobless numbers come out tomorrow. If I got you on Channel 8 tomorrow reacting to the jobless numbers, you would be seen by probably 150,000 people watch their 10 o'clock news. Yeah. And then if we took that and pushed it out through all your
right.
channels.
It's an exponential effect, right?
Yeah, and the people who are following your adventures and following your thoughts as a thought leader are like, oh my goodness,
right.
She must be like a super expert because Channel 8 could have Channel 8 could have chosen a lot of people to interview. They could have chosen that professor from SMU. Why are they choosing Fanny? Oh, she must be smarter than everyone, more credible than everyone. I mean, so you see where we're going with this. Is it the reason to get on the news is that you're borrowing the credibility of the news station. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story to illustrate this point. I had a client. My very first client is a civil attorney, and his name is Clint David. He actually offices in this building. Okay. And I got him on the anchor set of Channel 4, my old station, and he's sitting there talking to the anchors, Steve and Heather, about a court case. And I said to him afterwards, he killed it. It was the 9 o'clock news. He was probably seen by 150,000 people on live TV for about 5 minutes. Yeah. I said, okay, Clint, if you fired me tomorrow and we never worked together ever again, that piece of you on the anchor desk can be used for decades. Yes. What is it?
It lives on.
It lives on.
It lives on.
And I said, I described the anchor desk of a local news station as the throne of truth. That's where truth is told, right? Ever since they signed on the air in the 50s with a local newscast, that's where truth has been told. That's you watch JFK's assassination on local news. I mean, all of the anchors that came before you set the stage for this anchor desk to be the throne of truth, and they invited you, Clint David, to sit on the throne of truth and give your wisdom. Yeah. I said that clip right there could be used over and over again for decades to say, I'm credible, I'm one of the best lawyers in town, and you get it. It's
I once heard someone say, actually I follow this guy named Peng Joon on Facebook. Okay. And he called these little clips, you know, instead of, we have like real estate assets, which is a home or a mansion or a condo or whatever, but he called these little clips social media assets. They have value, right? It's a clip, it's just an MP4 file. Yes. But it's an asset. And it's an asset that can live on in this case, right? For that lawyer, and then redistributed, and then that gets more attention, and then it's like interest, right? Yes. You're getting interest on your asset. And so that always stuck in my head that social media and attention are little pieces of assets. Yes. And in a way, that's what we're doing with this television network that we're building. The idea is if you are the host of a show, you kind of have to be a super expert, because how many people can go to a cocktail party and say, hey, come on my TV show sometime? Yeah. So by giving this gift to people who have a blog or a podcast, have a professional studio with professional producers, says, I've arrived. Like right now, if
if I go to a cocktail party with 100 people, how
Yeah.
many people at the cocktail party can say, "Come on my TV show"?
Yeah.
Right now, only me, right?
Yes,
So,
you win.
so, 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 so
Yeah.
it's a way to enhance my expertise. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're on LinkedIn Live. I'm on LinkedIn Live. One of
Yeah.
the wonderful features about LinkedIn Live is they let your entire network know that you're about to go live.
Yes.
Beautiful feature.
Yes.
So even if people are not on, I'm fortunate enough to have 10,000 people on my LinkedIn
Yeah.
following,
Yeah.
and they're all getting buzzed
Exactly.
saying,
Yeah.
"Hey."
Like, as I'm looking through this, right? Just a quick shout out to everyone in the audience. Mark Reynolds, Chuck Vanderweel, Bruce Waller, Deepak, thank you for tuning in. Mike Rochelle, Nina Modi, like Jim's Ramsbottom, just all over. Like nowadays, this is free attention, right? So let's get to your book, because
Okay,
I thought there were some really cool tidbits in here.
awesome.
But maybe you can start off with the Elvis turkey story.
Okay.
That's you'll have to read it in more detail, but I thought that was a very cool example of how to get on the news.
So the Elvis turkey story is we got
Hashtag Elvis turkey.
So we got a call in the newsroom on the day after Thanksgiving, and the
Yeah.
day after Thanksgiving is a day when we all go to the mall and do mall reports, right?
Yeah.
And so this guy called the newsroom, and
By the way, this is a secret of how to get on the news, okay? So write it down.
he called the newsroom on a day when I was about to go out to North Park Mall and report live on
Yeah.
crowds, and he said, I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but I'm a turkey farmer, and I have this one turkey that I couldn't slaughter."
Uh-huh.
And they said, "Why couldn't you slaughter the turkey?" And he says,
Yeah.
"Because it looks too much like Elvis." And at the time, at the time, I was doing a feature.
I'm trying to imagine this phone call
right?
here.
Well, these
Yeah.
calls come into the main number of the newsroom all the time. Kind of crazies that will call in, and they said, "Hold on for a second. We're going to put you on with Jeff Crilley." And I was doing a lighter segment at the time called Really Crilley.
Oh,
So
love
he
it.
put me on the phone, and when he described what he had, I said, "This is wonderful. This is a great national story."
Yeah.
So we went to his little town of Kemp, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and he proudly pointed out the turkey that looked too much like Elvis. And he started dancing with the turkey in the barnyard, singing to the turkey, one for the money, and the turkey would say, "Gobble, gobble, gobble," two for the show. So he's dancing with this turkey in the barnyard. And after the little segment was over, I sent it to Fox, I sent it to CNN.
Yeah.
It was viewed all over the planet. And I used that story to begin the book because the point I was trying to make by including that story was there was no press release.
Yeah.
The guy really didn't even know what he was doing, and he got global attention because he was doing some things that he wasn't aware of. He was tying.
Let's break that down.
Yeah, so he's
Tell
tying
us.
into the feeding frenzy around Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is turkeys, and he's a turkey farmer, so he had that going for him, right? Elvis is, it doesn't matter. He's always a thing.
Yes.
So
timing, right?
Timing,
and then like a recognizable kind of
name.
relevant thing.
He was calling the right reporter. There's another chapter in the book called "Who Are You Going to Call?" And so he called up a reporter who actually saw how wonderful a story this was. I tell people sometimes you can have a great story and call 10 reporters, 9 of them don't care, but one of them makes you the lead story. So he was calling the right reporter, and the timing was perfect because it was so slow over that Thanksgiving weekend that CNN and Fox both needed fun, uplifting feature stories. So they grabbed it and went global. And I make the point in that chapter that, you know, if you come up with a brilliant story at the right time and you pitch it to the right reporter, the media will gobble it up.
All right.
Rim
there
shot.
You go, right there. So tell us another secret. What else would you say is a secret industry tip around getting on the news?
So one of the things I talk about in the book is tying into feeding frenzies. And that's if there's 2 chapters in the book that we use most often, and if you want, I'm going to make a free offer to your fans.
Oh, please,
If,
yes.
if in the comments, they'll just send an email address and you just forward it on to me.
Yeah.
I'll send them a free.
And please make sure you
Yeah.
connect with Jeff on LinkedIn, for those of you out there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Jeff Crilley.
And just ask for me to send you my free ebook, and I'll send you a free copy of my ebook.
Yeah.
But in the book, we talk about the feeding frenzy. So the feeding frenzy essentially says, when the media is going crazy about something, sell them what they're going crazy for. So that's thing one. Thing two is anointing yourself an expert. Most people don't think of themselves as an expert, but the media actually would. If you're a lawyer, you're a legal expert. If you're a doctor, you're a medical expert. If you're a realtor, you're a real estate expert. And if you own that, if you own the idea that, yes, I am an expert, call the media when the media is aggressively shopping for your story. So right now, the reason we had somebody on Fox and Friends is because of all the protests that are going on.
Yes.
And this new client, she just started with us, honestly, 3 days ago. And this morning she was on Fox and Friends. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm saying that it was because she's with Crime Stoppers of Houston, and she's an expert on crime and what's going on.
It
was very, very relevant. I put her in my daily e-blast, which is, read by 30,000 journalists across the country, among them producers at Fox and Friends. And they said, oh gosh, we need somebody who can talk about the protests and what's happening in Atlanta now. And so they reached out to her. And when I had a little pep talk with her last night, because she was going to bed early because she had to get up, early for Fox, she says, Jeff, I'm about to cry. I was like, really? She was like, yeah, Crime Stoppers of Houston. I've done a lot of Houston TV, but this is like on my bucket list. On my bucket list of things to do before I died was national television, like Fox and Friends or Good Morning America. And here I am, 3 days into working with you, and I'm on Fox and Friends. I feel like crying right now. And she was wonderful. The pep talk I gave her yesterday was, this is an audition for every other producer at Fox, because they all watch Fox and Friends. And if they see you, if you bring your A game, you'll end up being a reoccurring guest, not just on Fox and Friends, but on their other shows, the evening shows. So,
well, that leads me to my next question. Like, what are some of once you're on the news, what are some of the do's and don'ts?
Yes.
Once you're on.
So a do is talking sound bites. A don't is, don't be a commercial. Don't be a used car salesperson. And so when people come in to work with us, we often put them through media training because we want them to bring their A game every single time. So let's take the first part of that. What is a soundbite? A soundbite is not the steak, it's the seasoning on the steak. The steak is the who, what, where, when, why. The seasoning on the steak is the soundbite. So an example of that.
By the way, drop your questions for Jeff into the comments, and then we'll start to answer some of your questions as well.
Yeah, you bet. So an example of that is, many of you will remember years and years ago, Walter Mondale was running for president and Gary Hart was running for president. And I think Gary Hart had won the Iowa caucus and might have won New Hampshire. And so he was in the lead. Walter Mondale was in second place. And there was a Wendy's commercial, Where's the Beef? Okay, and Clara Peller, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but it was a very popular commercial in the 80s when this happened. And so they're in a national debate, and Gary Hart is kind of espousing his philosophy, which was kind of foo-foo and kind of out there and didn't have a lot of substance to it. And Walter Mondale said to Gary Hart on national television, you remind me of that TV commercial, Where's the Beef? And it was a knockout punch. It was like Gary Hart's campaign never recovered because of that knockout punch. And all of the stations used it, and it was the debate lasted for an hour and a half, and everybody used the Where's the Beef? Okay, if you really look at that quote, there's not a lot of meat there. it's all sizzle. It's all
Yeah.
seasoning.
Yeah. But it's
So
impressionable. It leaves an impression.
yes. So
Yeah.
the art of a good soundbite is really you say to yourself, okay, I know they're probably going to ask me this question. What's a more clever way to answer this question than to just say the who, what, where, when, why?
Right.
So we coach clients on how to talk in sound bites and deliver something that the media will use.
Yes. And then it's repeatable.
Yes.
Again.
Exactly.
Yeah. For people to like replay and all that. And then what shouldn't people do other than don't be, too salesy and all that, right? Anything else?
Don't ramble. Don't too many ums and ahs or going down rabbit trails. If you're going to tell a story on TV, it better be a brief story. Like I knew in this format, this is an hour-long show, and you asked me to tell the Elvis turkey story.
Yeah.
And I realized that story could breathe a little bit in this format.
Yeah.
In a 3-minute interview on Channel 4, I couldn't tell the Elvis turkey story. It would eat up half the segment.
Yeah.
I'd have to just kind of skim over it real fast.
Right.
So having awareness of how long this interview is going to last and can I be polite? You don't want to be on a soliloquy. In the book, I wrote a story. So the late, great Kid Craddock from the Kid Craddock Show.
I was so sad when he passed away.
Too. So I interviewed Kelly Raspberry for the book, and I put her in my book. And I was asking Kelly, give me an example of a do and a don't. And she said, well, you don't want to be Tony Robbins. I was like, why? What happened with Tony Robbins? She says, well, Tony Robbins was on the show one time and he was so selly. He was just selling his book. The kid actually like put him on mute so the audience could hear Tony talking. But what Tony couldn't hear was a kid mocking him. And so kid said on the air, says, wow, this guy's really a salesman. I wonder, I'm going to go get some coffee down the hall. And so as he's talking to the listener, you're hearing kid pour coffee and Tony's still kind of rambling on in the background. And then they finally came up for air and Tony was still selling his book. And then they thanked him for his time. But then for the next hour, they made fun of Tony Robbins for being so selly. So here it is. Tony Robbins thinks he's on in the 4th largest market getting a wonderful commercial. And he got the opposite. He was mocked by Kid Craddock and Kelly for being so selly. And I put that in the book because I said, boy, that you certainly don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. You have to create value.
Yes.
Right? And then authenticity and vulnerability. So for sure. And like, when we were talking, actually, let's do a quick check in terms of questions from the audience.
Sure.
From Jim Ramsbottom, how is PR changing in the fast and furious world of social media and a news media that is growing less credible?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
so
question.
I do think you have a news media that has divided itself. Everybody knows when they're watching this network, they're going to watch a certain slant. And when they watch that network, they're going to get a different slant. And that's one of the reasons that the news media is in decline. And you have the rise of social media.
You don't have the impartial views anymore, right? Yeah.
So the rise of social media is you have a phone that is also a live TV camera. I have a phone that's a live TV camera. It means that you can become your own network. And that's kind of what we're embracing here at this studio is that, you could go out to, Fanny, could go out to LA and beg some young producer to believe in you and help you produce your show. You don't need to go to LA. There's an instant studio. You already have your built-in audience. So
well, Gary Vaynerchuk, who I follow, for those of you, like he always says, like social media has democratized publicity and attention.
It really has.
Like, I mean, average Jane can get on social media
or viral videos. I mean, if you just Google baby laughing, you'll see one video that has 99 million views. Well, the most watched,
or a cat, something.
or a cat, something, right? Okay, so we're sharing those stories because right now, so Channel 8, Channel 4, among the most watched newscasts in North Texas, on a good night, they'll get about 150,000 viewers, which is respectable.
Yeah.
But if you put into YouTube right now, teenage makeup tips, you're going to see a young lady putting on makeup, and you'll look at her subscribers, and it's like 200,000, 300,000.
Yeah.
It's sending a message that, gosh, if a young lady at home can reach more people than a TV station in the 4th largest market.
Yeah. So for those of you out there, create content. And I see a bunch of emails on here, Jeff. So they definitely want your book.
Thank you.
On here. And Mike Rochelle said, I just bought the last copy on Amazon.
Oh, gosh. Well, okay.
You're sold out on Amazon,
out.
Jeff.
I have to restock.
Oh, let's see. So please drop. I see. With so many this is from Bruce Waller. Hey, Bruce. He asked, with so many podcasts today, what's the key to growing your audience? What do you think?
That's a great question. I love grabbing the audience of the guest. So one of our shows is called The Bobby Ray Show. And he's a friend of mine. He's retired. You know, he doesn't need the money. He's doing this for fun.
Yeah.
And when he came to us, he had an audience of 0. And he said, well, who can I get to come on the show that will help me grow my audience?
Yeah.
And it just so happened we had had an introduction to Ted Nugent and his wife, Shemaine. And so I said to Bobby Ray, I said, hey, how about Ted Nugent, the rock star? He says, you can get me Ted Nugent? I said, yeah. They want to come check out the studios anyway. So they came up here and they sat right here on the couch, and Bobby Ray interviewed them on his show. And then when they launched it, Ted and Shemaine decided to share it with their fans.
Yeah.
And so that show got enormous ratings. And essentially, Ted Nugent fans said, wow, this Bobby Ray show is kind of cute. This is fun. Like, subscribe, share. So if I was going to advise a podcaster on how to quickly grow their audience, start looking at your network on who can I invite on the show who has more fans than I do. It doesn't have to be a rock star.
Yeah.
It could be that young lady with makeup tips with 200,000 views.
Right. An influencer.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I follow Russell Brunson, who is the owner of ClickFunnels, and one advice he gave is make a list of your dream 100. So
cool.
So I think that can apply to anything, right? Your dream 100 clients, your dream 100 guests, and then just go after them, right? Just ask. If they say no, I mean, at least you ask, right?
One of the things that I think happened during the pandemic, when everybody was on lockdown, is a lot of these big speakers who couldn't go to conferences anymore. A lot of these very famous people were home with time on their hands. So I saw a lot of these very famous people doing podcasting and being guests on shows that if you looked at the show, you said, wow, that guy was on that show?
Yeah.
And all it told me is these people are accessible. All you have to do is ask. And if you have a show that you're proud of and you're like, hey, it's well produced, it's very watchable, there's no reason why a big celebrity wouldn't come on your show.
So Jeff, actually, who would be in your top 5 of the Dream 100 that you haven't interviewed yet?
So I've interviewed Mark Cuban, but not in this studio. And
okay.
I would love.
Mark Cuban, if you're listening.
Hit me up.
Love it.
I'd love to have TD Jakes since he's in town.
Okay.
I'd love to have TD Jakes on the show.
I don't know who that is.
The pastor at Potter's house.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
number 2.
Yep.
Your number 3.
Number 3. I think President Bush. So I had an introduction to President Bush through Bobby Ray. Bobby Ray is a big Bush supporter
Mm.
and was part of the campaign that got him elected governor and president. And so I had an introduction to Bush, and
Yeah.
I'm told that Bush is a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And now that he's out of the White House, he kind of lets
Yeah.
his hair down, and I think
Yeah.
he would absolutely enjoy the process of doing a local
something
show.
very local
Yeah,
with the community.
exactly.
And actually, funny side story, like the neighbor across the street from me
Mhm.
is a Purple Heart veteran.
Oh, cool.
And Bush has taken up, President Bush has taken up painting.
Yes.
And so he has a painting that President Bush painted of him in his home.
That's cool.
Sitting across the street from me.
That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, talk about pursuing your passions, right?
Yes.
Like it
Yes.
doesn't matter what age you are. If
Yes.
you want to pick up painting, pick up painting.
Yeah.
And yeah, his painting's sitting in my neighbor's house.
And of
So,
course,
yeah.
you, Fanny, having you on my show would be on that bucket list. You know that.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been so fun. Like, I'm just going to see what other questions there are here. And then, actually, yeah. Oh, Bruce also had another question. What's the most important thing you recommend for podcasters, I guess, after they've put up the podcast, audio or YouTube? Do you distribute on YouTube for your podcasters as well?
So all of our podcasters, and we've got 82 different shows. Believe it or not, we're producing 82 unique shows a month for a total of like 300 episodes, because some people do daily shows here.
Yeah.
We take care of a lot of the heavy lifting. So it goes, if the client wants it, it'll go live to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn if they have access, Twitter, and then we peel off the video and send it to iHeart, iTunes, and half a dozen other platforms. So what it allows the podcaster to do is just be the talent. Most podcasters don't want to fiddle with the lights and all.
It's a lot. It's a lot, even just for my LinkedIn show.
Well, I can tell you, I'm a baby boomer, and if I didn't have a staff to produce my show, there would be no Jeff Crilley show, because I'm technically challenged. I wouldn't know how to do all this stuff. I wouldn't do a show. So I guess my advice would be, if you're technically challenged, you may want to have somebody else produce your show for you. Some very smart people say work on your business instead of in your business. And if you really take an inventory of what you're doing during your work day, if you're spending too much time doing something that does not give you joy and is really draining your joy, and your time could be better spent in an area that makes you money, go ahead and let somebody else do that. So like when I was a young reporter and fairly broke, I remember doing my own starching of my shirts. So on Sundays, I would watch the game and I would be starching my 5 shirts. And then I started to make a little bit of money, and I saw a sign for the first time, Fanny. Maybe you've seen this sign. Dry cleaning, 99 cents a shirt. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yes.
For $5 a week, that guy can do my starch, and it's probably going to be better than the job I would do.
And your hour is worth more than $5.
Yeah. So that's when I started to see dry cleaners. And so the same thing is true for your audience. No matter where they are in their journey, at a certain point, having somebody else do it rather than you do it may make financial sense.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I always get asked, and it ties back to what you were saying earlier about when you're on the news, you're perceived as the expert and you're set up as the expert. But a lot of times we have this, what we call imposter syndrome, right? Where, like, who am I to give advice? Who am I to think I'm enough or worthy to be sharing this kind of advice? What would you say to someone like that? How should they combat that?
So I think there's a voice in all of our heads that says the same thing, and you need to learn to silence that voice, and sometimes tell that inner child to go time out. Because
time out. I love it.
So much of life is fake it till you make it.
Mm.
It really is.
Mm.
And even at this company, I'm the CEO. I don't do the day-to-day. I don't run, my daughter Sarah is our vice president, and Josh is our head of operations. They do the day-to-day, and sometimes when stuff happens, the employee looks to me as, well, you must have all the answers. You're the CEO.
Mm.
Well, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
There was a lot of CEOs that everybody looked at and said,
Yeah.
hey, boss, what are we
Look
doing?
to the leaders and
There was no playbook for the pandemic that we could all just dust off and say, okay, you do this X, Y, and Z. And so for a CEO to truly emerge from the pandemic with the faith of their team, they had to somewhat fake it till they make it.
Mm.
I mean, and even being transparent and saying to the team, hey, look, I don't have all the answers, but here's what I can tell you. I know what we're doing this week, and here's how we're going to all row together in the same direction. In fact, I'll tell you a candid moment. The pandemic hits, I'm a marketing firm.
Yeah.
First thing people cut is their marketing firm.
Yeah.
And so on a Saturday, I had this really kind of scary moment where, like, gosh, I've got 20 full-time employees. I don't want to have to lay off people. What happens if everybody drops my marketing firm? And it was a Saturday, and I got a call out of the blue. And I don't typically get business calls on a Saturday. And I got a business call, and it was from a guy who leads a men's Bible study. And he says, hey, Jeff, I'm locked out of the church. We can't do our Bible study. I guess you do something with streaming or something with broadcasting. Could we use your studios or your people?
Yeah.
And so I looked up and I said, okay, God, I'm listening. Wow, that was a sign from God that everything's going to be okay. And the truth is the company grew 20% during the pandemic. We didn't miss a single beat with the podcasters. Everybody started broadcasting from home. And then on the media side, we picked up a bunch of clients because there were a lot of experts at home watching the news, and then they would see their competitor getting interviewed, and they get mad, and they say, wait a minute, that should be me. What are they interviewing that guy for?
The competitive spirit, yes.
And so we got a lot of like, hey, Jeff Crilley, you talked to me 3 years ago about, getting on the news. It's time to go. I can't believe they interviewed that guy. Please put me on the news. So I'm here to tell your audience that it doesn't, you're all going to have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Everybody does. But you also have to have that courage and that swagger to say, you know what, I don't have it all figured out, but here's what I do know, and this is where we're going.
And people trust honesty, right? They trust transparency. And, leaders out there, it's okay to say, we've never done this before. Let's try this.
Yes.
And let's go through it together.
Showing, being vulnerable. I remember right after the pandemic, the whole team started doing Zoom calls. And so it was our first Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
And Sarah, my daughter, invited me to come on a Zoom meeting, kind of the end of the day meeting.
Yeah.
And, I'm not in on all the Zoom meetings. And so I was there to observe, and everybody was reporting on what their day was like and what they did. And I just got misty. I got kind of choked up that everybody was working so hard, rowing together from home in this uncharted water. And I just kind of got choked up. And I told the team how proud I was of them for working so hard during this uncertain time. And it was because of their hard work that we went through that lockdown period that was terrifying for companies. There are companies that went out of business during those 2 months. So,
you can always you really see leadership in the hard times, right?
Yes.
It's easy to be a leader during the good times. But in the
Yes.
hard times, it's a lot harder. Yeah. So, this hour is just flying by. Jeff, I don't even know where the time's going. But one thing I always ask my guests, and because all of them are content creators, right? What is your advice and your thoughts around why is it so important for people to create content and to get themselves out there and to share their voice?
One, content is king. It really is. That's where everything is going right now. People who have an audience, you look at the most listened to podcasts, there are people who are conveying information or interviewing people with information. They're creating a nourishment for their tribe, just as you are, right? You've carved out a beautiful niche for
We're
yourself.
nourishing our brain
You really are.
and our souls
Yes.
too. Yeah.
So people watching this who are thinking to themselves, should I or shouldn't I? Absolutely should. You should. As a marketer, I say, the world is very noisy right now. There's a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
There's like 10,000 channels,
Yes.
a million
Look,
channels on your phone, right?
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
with all of that competition to be heard, you have to not just toot your own horn, but strike up the band. You got to get a whole bunch of instruments going, and you can create your own buzz.
Yeah.
And so just do it. The Nike expression, just do it. If you're sitting there thinking, should I or shouldn't I, just do it. There's an expression in the book world, the one-day novel. I'm going to write a novel one day.
Yeah.
And one day never happens.
Yeah.
So you got to get out there, and you're going to make mistakes. Just don't make expensive mistakes. Make inexpensive mistakes.
Yeah.
So like for the first 3 years of running this company, we didn't have a physical office. I was running it out of my house, saving all that money on rent.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're trying things out that aren't expensive, you can make small mistakes and win. If you look at Mark Cuban's record, and we both admire Mark Cuban, he's now part owner in 100 companies through Shark Tank. 100, maybe more.
Yeah.
Not all of them are successful.
No, there's been failures. He just keeps on going.
He just keeps on going, and we know him for the hits. We don't know him for the failures. So just keep getting up to bat.
Love it. Let me just see if there's any final questions. Let us know in the comments below if you have any final questions for Jeff. And even if we don't get to it, please connect with Jeff Crilley on LinkedIn and all the other social media platforms, right?
Absolutely.
You're everywhere. And ask him your questions. And maybe, let's see. Oh, Sarah Waskow was just reinforcing your point about do what you're good at and pay other people to do what they're good at. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, this is a shout out to one of my clients, Alex Ruddick. She is a pastry chef in Fort Worth. And she says, how can a pastry chef utilize being on the news?
Ooh, I love that. One, I want to invite her on my TV show. So
there you go, Alexis.
Come on my TV show. Make the trip over to Dallas, and I'll
she
put
makes
you on
the
my
most
show.
beautiful cookies, and she will put a company logo on the cookie.
Okay, all right. I'm going to give you a multi-million-dollar idea. Are you ready?
Okay.
And I stole this. It's actually in my book.
Yes.
The Celebrity Bakery in Highland Park Village years ago used to do a contest every 4 years. They would do donkey cookies and elephant cookies. And it was Highland Park, so the elephant always won. But they had a cookie poll. And as you walked in, you would see, elephant cookies versus donkey cookies. And the media would come over and cover it and say, okay, according to the unscientific Highland Park Celebrity Bakery cookie poll, as a pastry chef, she could make a Trump whatever and a Biden whatever and start a poll, an informal poll.
We're in an election year.
In an election year. An informal poll. The poll doesn't have to be scientific. In fact, she could strongly urge people to try and buy the election because she wins. And then keep track of, Trump has sold this many and Biden has sold this many, and it costs her very little, but the publicity would go crazy. So hit me up if you end up doing that story. I'll help you get it out to the media.
I love it. And so final thing, I always ask my guests, I always talk about practicing gratitude, and I think we should do that no matter what we do, whatever career we're in, whatever situation we're in, whatever day it is. And I know there's the standard of, family and health and all that. But for you, outside of those kind of standard gratitude practices, what are you grateful for, Jeff?
I'm really grateful for my daughter who's in our studio audience today. I'm grateful for my daughter because she's 30 years old, she's running the company, and she's freeing me up to do all the wonderful things that I get to do. I get to interview people, I get to be in my happy place all the time. In fact, my daughter will say, Daddy, just go be in your happy place. I got this. I got this. And so I am grateful for all of the stuff that goes on at this company that I don't even know about. All of the employees that are working early, late, creating magic. You know, I love to be like surprised by my employees. A quick little story, and I know. So I was going through our studios downstairs, and I came up to one of our employees, Cash Payne is his name, and I said, Cash, what are you working on? He says, oh, I'm just editing this video from Boston. I was like, were you in Boston? He says, yeah, all last week. I was like, what were you doing in Boston? He was like, oh, shooting for client XYZ. I said, really? He's like, yeah, and I'm going to Denver next week. I was like, you are? He was like, yeah. And this is like a year or so ago. And I felt incredibly grateful that here I am, the CEO. I had no idea that this employee was flying to different cities, creating this magic for this client who's delightfully happy. And I'm smiling because that's a blessing. It's a blessing when you get a team that's working together.
Hired good people.
I'm hiring good people. I'm delegating stuff that I really doesn't interest me to run the company. I love to own the company. I hate to run the company. So I'm playing to my strengths, which I think is words of wisdom for everybody watching this right now. Do the stuff that you love. Do the stuff that gives you joy, and all of the stuff that drains your joy. Slowly start to give that to other people, even if it's just a contractor or a virtual assistant. Because that extra time you get not doing the stuff that you drains your joy, that extra time you have can be spent making money and growing the company.
Absolutely. Jeff, thank you so much for your time, for all the great insights and advice, and I'm truly honored. So
Likewise.
thank you.
Thank you.